Okay, so welcome everybody to this VaxHub Global information webinar. This is a session that we have had for previous calls of VaxHub Global as well, and basically it provides first an introduction to the hub, an introduction to the call and its rules. And for this time, we also decided to provide an additional session, so it's a little bit longer, which is advice to applicants based on the feedback we have had from assessors on previous calls, and we hope this is very useful. There's going to be plenty of time to answer your questions as well. So first of all, in terms of some housekeeping, so we are recording this event, so when we edit, we'll probably remove the parts of the Q&A if we can't do it on the go. But in terms of my talk and the following two talks, please keep your microphone muted, and then there's going to be Q&A. There's going to be, I'm going to pause for a Q&A in 2 points, and then there's going to be the other two talks with Q&A. You can either use the raise hand button or a mute, etc., or please do use the chat. For those of you who are from one of our UK higher education institutions, who's a member, who's already a spokes or part of the hub essentially, or a company that's a partner, official partners, we have a confidentiality contract, but we admit staff, people from on this call who are not part of the hub, and so they don't have that clause of confidentiality protection. Just saying, I'm sure you won't, but just about sharing, avoiding sharing anything sensitive during this call. In terms of what we are planning to do today, basically is we are going to it's going to be my talk first, so an introduction to the hub and the teams and expertise, and then talk a little bit more about the call in particular, with the details, the timelines, the eligibility, what we intend to fund, and the application process. As we noticed that there are a few attendees who are not partners already. So I'm just going to go through very quickly through the enrollment procedures, but yeah, and also wanted to have slides for you to visualize for after. I might pause at that stage, and then I will also for any Q&A, and then if all is good, we can go to the advice for applicants. So this is based on assessors' feedback on previous calls, and then we'll finish with more Q&A on that. We also have 2 external speakers, and this is really in an effort to provide more advice. And so these are there are going to be 2 presentations from successful awardees with also Q&A. We have a bit of a plan for timing for this call, but I think we will the timing will depend on the Q&A as well. So for those of you who are new, or as a reminder to the others, this call is part of VaxHub Global, but myself, so I'm the director of both hubs. So my name is Martina. I am professor in biochemical engineering at UCL. Both hubs are a co-directorship with the University of Oxford. In particular, the co-director of VaxHub Sustainable on the left-hand side is Professor Dave Sarah Gilbert, and Kath Green is actually the co-director with me on VaxHub Global. So it is really a co-directorship from UCL Biochemical Engineering at the University of Oxford with different institutes there. I'll present the team shortly, but essentially I'm not going to go through the aims of VaxHub Sustainable, but in terms of the VaxHub Global, our funder is Department of Health and Social Care, and the call is really focused on vaccines for low and middle income countries, in particular with the three themes: improving speed, lowering cost, and improving ease of manufacturing. So while we in the hub present the team later in terms of the expertise, which is internal to the hub, but we fund, the hub funds researchers in different institutions. So UCL and Oxford, they have the majority of the sort of researchers, but also other higher education institutions. We focus on 5 vaccine platform technologies. We have platform funding, which it is money, essentially funds for projects, and it is the 1 million feasibility study that you see there at the top in the center. That is the focus of this VaxHub Global calls. And then we have additional funds for internal projects. We work on several different aspects in addition to research. We work on policy, and we had some call VaxHub Global on policy, I think a few months ago. So now projects are ongoing. We have also outreach programs with school. We have a budget for training, which is going to be advertised probably and sort of explained a little bit later on for VaxHub Global. And then also a joint network. The joint network is joint because it is joint between the two hubs. We have 30 plus companies to really share expertise, exchange knowledge, and create a community. I'll go through the partners first, and then I'll present the team of the hub. In terms of the partners, and I know some of these are represented here, we have had great interest. And so in the fully executed contracts, you see 32 partners are official members of the hub. So there are international organizations, there are large manufacturing companies, there are low middle income countries in the black box, and there are also other UK higher education institutions and a lot of SMEs proposing a lot of new technologies. We have had in our institutions to obviously process all these contracts, and so there are some that are still at contractual stage, but I am showing at the bottom those companies that are really a little bit more advanced and closed to essentially confirming the membership. In terms of the team, I mentioned both UCL and the University of Oxford. So in UCL, we do a lot of research in process development, let's say across a number of different, from upstream to downstream. But if you look around this slide, you will see a very diverse expertise, from early discovery to vaccinology to all the sort of process development and its link to manufacturing and sort of GMP support, analytics, down to the delivery. And different people pictured on the slides are leading different types of different projects on different vaccine technologies. So this is these are the co-investigators that work with PDRAs, and each PDRA is a hub-funded researcher who has been involved in a specific project. This type of research is, we communicate these and disseminate through different routes, including our annual meeting, which we usually have in London in November. So this is all for the introduction to the hub. So what about the call? Right. So we have a remaining budget for this call of 600K. So it's quite substantial. we have different themes in the hubs, which are also present on our websites, and we have identified some areas that they are particularly encouraged, and I'll go through that in a second. Applicants should really provide, what we're looking for is a project that couldn't be funded otherwise. Yeah? Applicants also, this is part of our eligibility criteria, must have signed a collaboration agreement by the end of the co-submission period. And so I'll have a few slides to show the partners' enrollment procedure. Now, the context of this call. So this is not the first call for some of you. You might have been at previous information webinars. And what I have on this slide is really the context and all the calls that we have organized so far. And obviously the calls are open and eligible, our members are eligible to apply for both hubs. And so because we have a related amount of funding for sustainable call as well. We started with sustainable, and we then had the 3 calls for global, one which was similar to the one we are launching, we have just launched, and then one in the middle with the UK focus, which was on policy and delivery. So those projects, the projects from call 1, 2, and 3 are now ongoing or nearing the end or midway. And now what we are talking about is the final global call, which is in the brown box there, launched on the 6th of July. Usually we give some time before this information webinar to familiarize with all the application documents which are present on our website, with a call deadline towards the end of September. We know summer is not an ideal moment, but to be fair, we have had calls on different time periods, and there is probably not a time which suits everybody. Now we envisage to go in fall through our to the review of the projects and make decisions as quickly as possible and then notify applicants and successful applicants with a project start date from January and a maximum end date, project end date of December. Just to say also that for all members of the hub, we will have 2 additional calls, which are funded by VaxHub Sustainable. VaxHub Sustainable focuses in general on vaccines for pandemic preparedness, and so a lot of the work that you're probably doing might be relevant for those calls, with slightly different eligibility criteria in terms of who can lead a project there as well. But just to say that next year we will launch in July another call for sustainable, and then we will launch a final one in early 2028. So there's going to be more money for projects there that we will advertise. More information on the platform funding. So projects are 100K, but essentially we accept the value between 75K and 100K. So it doesn't need to be 100K. Yeah, if there is money that those funds are not needed. The duration of the projects, we envisage something between 6 and 12 months. This is really up to you and up to the project. We will fund up to 6, so it is quite a lot. You can cost staff salary, funds for dissemination of your work, depending on the work that you're doing, that you're proposing. For example, funds for traveling, to go to a conference, to organize an event, seminar, etc. There's quite flexibility in terms of what you can do. Obviously, if you're carrying on a research or a specific tech transfer project, then we need costs for consumables and other directly incurred. For this call, equipment is allowed only if it is bought and purchased and then based physically in a low middle income countries organizations. And I think we might have, we need to take this. We need to take this. We can't stay in the UK, for example. Yeah, for those of you who are.
Regional 6-13 ayda up to 6 projects funded. Yani bir şeyler mi? The cost can be used for staff salary, travel, conference.
Hello, can you just mute yourself, please? Thank you. Right. Okay, so just to share for those of you who have just joined, we will share the slides. We're recording the webinar, so this information is going to be available later. So researchers can lead on one application per call, and so we need to obviously consider the project states as in case you're interested to apply, for example, to different goals. We have main source of information through our website, and also this is sent to our company contacts, etc., or those, especially those who have joined and those who are in the process of joining. We try to maintain communication on the calls, etc. There. So I'm maybe repeating some of the aspects, but I think it is quite important. So hub partners will have signed the contract at the time the call is closed. So by the time the deadline, which is the 25th of September, will be then eligible to apply. So you can indeed prepare a call, even if you're not a member, although I would suggest that in that case, you need to reach out to us quite quickly, to ensure that we can meet those timescales. We are accepting applications from an individual partner or from multiple. Historically, collaborative applications have been prioritized, so we have a scoring systems, and then we try to look at the quality, novelty, and impact first, but then also the type of collaborations that is there, and whether there are collaborations versus individual partners. We have different hub research themes. So, for example, supporting global health, supporting manufacturing capacity, etc. We have also different themes that are about speed, cost, and ease, and so those, of course, alignment to those themes is going to be looked at. We have flexibility around costings. Just to say that obviously, even if you're a partner, but you have a collaborations with a higher education institutions, that's one of the hub, for example, that has a hub with a COI that has a hub funded PTRA, then one successful mechanisms has been to carry on the work is carried on by that PTRA with essentially a hub funded PTRA, but can be funded by the projects for a certain number of months and dedicate full time to the project with a collaborator. We have examples of tech transfer projects, organizations of events, maybe an element of training or support towards upskilling and towards after retention. So all of that is something that we have funded before, and it's been quite successful. So we have different sections on the application, as you have seen in our form. So there is a bit of a summary, then there is a novelty, quality, management, cost impact, and ODA compliance. We don't want to have a long report, so we try to keep wording limits, but these are the sections which have been assessed in the past, and then also our advisory board has in a way ratified, approved, and suggested that they are there. What happens upon when you submit this application? So we have a two-stage review process. So we over summer, before the deadline, we are identifying independent reviewers, and so we allocate to reviewers who's not me or Kath, as we might have projects from our institutions, and so we don't think that that is a fair approach. So we have independent reviewers from different applications to projects that are not from the same institutions, essentially. And then when we provide those provide comments and ranking. We discuss, for example, me and Kath come in when we discuss the full ranking, difference of opinions between reviewers. For example, these are all discussed in details, and we discuss this with our independent advisory board, which might slightly change the ranking, for example, depending on the opinions of the reviewers and the difference between them. So as a way of really normalizing the results. And then we go to the sort of top ranked. We might go to a process where we ask for more information, for example, especially as far as the finances are concerned, or who's doing the work, etc. If this is not clear, but still the ranking is quite high, we might reach out to get more information before the award is confirmed. We try to streamline the monitoring and the reporting once the award is confirmed, and we aim also at supporting any future, for the projects that we have funded, any future funding, any future dissemination, we tend to support as well. So as a sort of a summary, before we go to the partners enrollment procedure. So this is the final call, but it's the final call for the global. All our partners, including low and middle income countries, will have access to the VaxHub Sustainable Call. There are different eligibility criteria in terms of who can lead a project, but everybody is going to be, all collaborations will be accessible to Hub partners. This call in particular closes on the 25th of September. We have a budget for up to 6 projects between 6 and 12 months in durations, and must be completed by end of the year in 2027. We have a specific focus for this one. It's not really a focus of the call. It's just like because of the work which is ongoing in the hub, there are maybe some aims and objectives that we have not achieved fully. And for that reason, and we would like to achieve this with, hopefully, if there is expertise and if there is common interest and alignment with, with projects that we fund through this call. We're not envisaging 6 projects to focus on precision systems for encapsulation and spray drying and freeze drying formulations. So we're not envisaging that all projects, but if there is a common interest and alignment, then we will give priority to this, because this is really aligns with something that is ongoing in the hub, and so we will manage the scoring in this way. So for full transparency, this is what we're looking for projects in this, but not 6 projects specifically. One might actually fulfill the aims and objectives on the hub, and then we can fund other 5 on completely different aspects of the vaccine manufacturing. In this call, companies can lead projects, and I think a collaboration with 2 partners, or between, for example, a company and a higher education institution, internal or external to the hub, still members of the hub, would be ideal. But even between 2 companies, that's absolutely fine. And the hub can help with this. If there is an idea, if there is a project, if there is an area. So if there is an idea about the project, then especially if you're new to the hub, then if you reach out to us, then we can maybe circulate that idea internally. I have a knowledge of the interest of the different companies, etc., because I talk to them frequently, and I can understand a little bit more if there is a successful pairing, and I can make introductions. So before I stop, just very quickly on the partners enrollment procedure, I am putting these slides in as we noticed that there's a few attendees who who are new. So just for information, I'll go through the next 2 slides very quickly, but you will have the information and the recording of the webinar for you. So usually we have an introductory meeting with the prospective partner and myself to discuss, to have an introduction, a mutual introduction, discuss priorities and explore synergies, etc. And then if a company is interested in joining after that meeting, then obviously we'll share an example. We share the contract for because they have any financial schedule, because usually this helps discussion within the company, and then essentially we also ask for specific details. This is really the first stage. At this point, usually our prospective partners go away, discuss with this company at different levels, and then they need to come back to us and confirm their interest. If so, there's a process that is conducted in my institutions for due diligence and also preparation of different costings, etc. And then the partner is added as a funder in our internal system. And then in terms of finalization, there is a contract which is then sent digitally for a signature, finalizing the agreement. So this is basically what you will receive, and we have this and the process. It seems simple, but there is quite a number of steps and can take a few weeks. Very happy to answer any questions if you are new and if you'd like to become a partner, but it's best if this is done offline, and it's a little bit not really the focus for today. So I think where does this come from? So this comes from essentially the reviewers, the assessors, so those who, different scientists who we have with relevant expertise, which we have asked to review proposals independently, and also maybe some of these comments from the advisory board. And our advisory board is there are members of large companies, large vaccine manufacturers, CEPI, Gates Foundation, and other companies with wide range of expertise there. And so we have combined a little bit the advice on the applications in these 2 slides. So for VaxHub Global, we are asked that projects have a low middle income countries focus and the benefits. So for example, you might want to highlight this in the summary part of the application. How does this align to one or more of the hub themes? So how does it improve the speed? How does it essentially makes manufacturing or makes a specific either in analytics or a specific process steps easier? How does it reduce cost, or at least has the potential to reduce cost? Of course, if there is a collaboration with the low middle income countries company, it's much easier to demonstrate the obviously alignment and the benefit in this one. So there it does not rule out a project completely, but it's true that in the ranking, it's if there is a low middle income countries partners that says, okay, this is what we need, and this is our context, this is what we need, and this is what we would use the 100K for in collaboration with others. Of course, it's basically it's much easier for them to demonstrate the focus and the benefits. But in the past, we have supported projects that didn't have a low middle income countries partners, but they had maybe a very, very close focus and potential in terms of decreasing cost, for example. There is a novelty section, and so this is just some support and help in terms of what we are looking for there. So, for example, in order to explain novelty, we need a bit of explanation in terms of the background. I know we don't give you a lot of the sort of, there's a word count, but it's always nice to have a little bit of context and then explain clearly why you'd like to, what you're proposing is different. And it can be different and can be novel in very different way. We have projects that are more like research based, and then so they will have scientific impact, or there are others that are much more company based, for example, and they're much more practical, and the impact is going to be much more tangible. But they might still bring new knowledge, but it's more about maybe a milestone or about decreasing cost, etc. Or it could be that we are looking to have a new approach, or for example, a new methodology to achieve something specific that is you want to try as a proof of principle here. Okay. And how does it fit to the hub themes? In terms of the section on quality and impact, I just wanted to, I hope I don't sound patronizing, but this wasn't clear or super clear to me. And so that's why I have decided I always point to the table, which I'm going to show you in a second, in relation to what outcomes, outputs, and impact are like, and what essentially UKRI, so the UK Research Council, looks out for, and this is our, in a way, our new reality, but it's also a question of terminology and using this terminology throughout, so that obviously the assessors can understand what you mean. And so, just in case you're not familiar, this is really the terminology. So usually with an output it could be in the case of a project, it could be that the work might result in scientific impact, right, in one publication, which basically has maybe two partners, both partners are involved there. But it could also be a short briefing, it could be a report, it could be, for example, that there is a new partnerships being formed that is really great, for example, or it could be skills, method, tools, data sets. An outcome is more about the change and how we measure it as much as possible, as much as we can, right? So it could be that there is increased knowledge, for example. It could be that there is a method which is an output, but what are your plans for that new method to be adopted in the company? Okay, it's great to have a project that develops new things, but how are we going to use them, right? So that is moving to impact in a way, and as well as it might lead to other forms of economic, social, or policy impact. And then the impact as we intend it in the UK is really more the longer term economic or social. And that is really about, it's not really about more the evidence, but also about the numbers. How much, as for example, there has been a project that has led to new results or new methods, then you have a plan for the methods to be adopted within your company, and then you, in a way, predict how much that method can improve productivity, and you provide maybe an idea of numbers of what's the potential, for these improvements. Or it could be that there are some cost savings or jobs created, etc., or maybe that it has an impact on policy. I know that this is more long term, but okay. But thinking about the future and the long term is always probably good with these projects. My second slide is going to be on on other sections. So management, for example, sometimes we have difficulty understanding who does the work. So I think that that's something that's quite important, right? we have maybe 2 collaborators and we have 2 contacts from those collaborators, but then all the project is talked about as a third person, and we don't know who's doing what. And so I think that this is where we are looking for clarity. So it's not really judging about how you will do it. It's more about having clarity. For example, this collaboration is with the higher academic institutions in the UK, in the hub, etc. How many months of the PTRAs are planned, right? So we know that you have predicted, okay, this work can be done in those time, and we need, for this work to be completed, we need a postdoc for full time for those 2 months. Or for example, if there is a part of the work, for example, supervision, time for meetings, time for brainstorming, or maybe time in the lab for the experimental work, etc., that is carried out or is planned to be carried out within the company, how can this be facilitated within the company, right? Do you have the necessary arrangements so that, for example, an employee can dedicate some time, and how many months, how much time, etc. This needs to be in a way realistic. Yeah. The other sections that it's there is EDI. So the VaxHub has an EDI mission. So this is about equalities, diversities, and inclusion. So, and this is obviously expected from our funder, from the UK government, as well as from the our intermediate managers, the EPSRC, so the Engineering and Engineering Research Council, and but it is the hub is really, this is really embedded in the hub. So usually what we find in this for the EDI sections, that there are some general statements like, in our company, these are the values, and it's more like about, I don't think that you need to come up with new projects here, but it's more about which aspects, whether something within the equality or within the diversity or within the inclusion, which aspect does resonate with your values or with your institution's values or with your company's values? Is there anything that is particularly important, for you as an employee or within your institutions? I was just brainstorming by myself and thinking about what could those aspects be. It really depends on the project, and but for example, the digital accessibility of information that's resulting from a project is something that could absolutely fit here, right? So you carry on your project as you do normally, but then you find that you come up with a form of dissemination that is accessible, more accessible, and then maybe there is some funds dedicated to that. For example, if you were to build a page on a website, that would need specific requirements and specific characteristics in order for it to be fully accessible. Or, for example, we can think about health and well-being of the individuals involved in the projects, thinking about dedicating a particular employee, for example, and support them with some training or support them with a career trajectory, so them giving them the confidence, etc., to lead on something and plan within the project a seminar that they could lead. Right, there is a story there, with a company that is really cares for staff retention, for example, or of staff upskilling. That would be something that falls under the health and well-being of individuals. Or, for example, you could plan for a small output, how you'll share, the knowledge resulting from the project internally in a way that could benefit others. So, or the others could benefit not only from the results in themselves, but also from your experience in this call, so that others, you've been successful in this call, and I think you went through the process of collaborating with others, brainstorming, and then applying and writing and thinking and designing the project, etc. That is all experience and skills that others might value. So it's as simple as that, really. And then last but not least, we sometimes have late applications, and we feel very bad because sometimes they're late by a short period of time, and we understand that everybody has priority, and we always look to be very clear in terms of the deadline and the submission process. And so if you're not, please let us know. But yeah, we need to be fair also to those who have submitted on time. And so unfortunately, we want to be able to to review submissions if they are submitted late. And with this one, I think I'll stop for Q&A before I introduce our maybe second session of Q&A before I introduce my the next speakers and my guests. Okay, let's see if there's any questions at all. Okay, so if not, don't know if Ashik is here. Yeah, I can see you. So what is going to happen next is that there are two presentations from successful awardees of our previous calls, and so they will have a short presentations in terms of their experience and advice to others regarding their success, and then this will be followed by Q&A, a Q&A session. So we have asked two of our previously awarded, previous awardees. And the first one is Ashik, so is an assistant manager for R&D in Incepta, Bangladesh. The project is still ongoing. We met with two of the people from Incepta who came to UCL and visited Oxford as well very recently. So the project seems to be going quite well, probably close to the end now. So it's a pleasure to introduce you, Ashik, and you can share your slides and unmute.
Thank you, Martina. So
Thank you.
I'm very excited to present. Yeah. So I think.
Perfect. We can see your slides in presentation mode. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you. I am Muqtadir Rahman Ashik. So I am currently working with Incepta as a lead of upstream here. And welcome to this webinar presentation. So Dr. Mainul, our head of research, intended to deliver this presentation in today's webinar. However, due to a prior official commitment, he is unable to present today. So I will be presenting on his behalf. So I am presenting like our ongoing, as you have said, like our ongoing project streamlining pDNA production in Bangladesh. Today I will give an overview on Incepta um, uh, and current vaccine landscape of Bangladesh, our collaboration project with UCL under VaxHub Global Fund, and a little bit about the whole experience. Um, so Incepta Pharmaceuticals Limited. So we can see the mission and vision of Incepta is to provide quality healthcare products to ensure better health for everyone and everywhere. So currently, Incepta is the second largest pharmaceutical company in Bangladesh. But for vaccine, Incepta is the first and the one company producing its own vaccine bulk. Incepta has more than 11,000 employees with three manufacturing sites near the capital Dhaka. So we are exporting. So we have like uh, more than 1,300 products in our portfolio, and among them 300 plus products are the first ever products introduced in Bangladesh. So you can see the various capabilities of our manufacturing. So, like oral dosage forms, liquid, sterile products, respiratory and nasal products, animal vaccines, and including the advanced biopharmaceuticals like vaccines and biosimilars. So, mm, at global platform, currently, Incepta is exporting to 300 plus generic products to 102 countries in 6 continents, and the number is increasing very fast day by day. So, among our biologics portfolio and the upcoming products in the pipeline, so I can show you that Incepta is like currently manufacturing. Five vaccine bulk in his at his own product. So, meningococcal polysaccharide vaccine, recombinant hepatitis B vaccine, oral cholera vaccine, inactivated rabies vaccine, and typhoid conjugate vaccine. So we have one product, live attenuated dengue vaccine, in for clinical trial. And among upcoming products, the importance are like VLP-based HPV, pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, meningococcal conjugate vaccine, and live attenuated rotavirus vaccine. So, other than vaccines, we have also some licensed biosimilar products. You can see. So, at a glance, we can see that building one of the largest biologics portfolios in emerging markets through innovation in vaccines and biosimilars. That's the Incepta's goal. So, in Bangladesh, for decades, Bangladesh was entirely dependent on imported vaccines. So you can guess during any pandemic like COVID-19, this dependency often placed the nation in a vulnerable position. So leading to a supply shortages and subsequently delaying critical vaccination programs. So, these the reasons is like the high cost and counterfeit risk and periodic shortage limits access to vaccines. So currently, Bangladesh is pursuing self-reliance to strengthen pandemic preparedness and health security. So, INSEPTA established its vaccine division in 2011, and it was founded to deliver affordable, locally adapted, and quality assured vaccines. So this goal is directly supports SDG 3 and universal health coverage commitments. So how VaxHub Global project is helping us? So as you know, Incepta is a part of WHO mRNA Hub. So under the hub, the technology transfer covers all the mRNA vaccine development platform and the technology transfer. So the missing link is the pDNA production. So as you know that plasmid DNA is the essential template from which mRNA is transcribed, and without in-house pDNA production, Bangladesh as well as Incepta's mRNA vaccine manufacturing chain remains dependent on imported material at its very first step. So, as pDNA production falls outside the scope of the WHO mRNA technology package, so this remains the very critical missing component for true end-to-end capability. So for this missing link, we applied with UCL we got like VaxHub Global Funded for this mRNA, the pDNA production capability to build in-house. So the overview is very simple. So first, to select a strain and design the plasmid and the optimization of upstream and downstream, including media design and fermentation development, the lysis and other chromatography process design with all the regulatory requirements. And after that, the fund also covers the hands-on training and tech transfer to Incepta. Uh, in a brief, we can say that like our collaboration developed a scalable pDNA production platform to feed mRNA vaccine manufacturing, transfer a reproducible lab scale process to Incepta's pilot facility, train us hands-on practice at UCL, and build the long-lasting technical capacity for future vaccine and biologics platform. So, so at a glance, our project aim was to create a versatile, replicable pDNA production platform as raw material for mRNA vaccines, complemented by training and technology transfer to strengthen Bangladesh's manufacturing capacity. So, this is the overview of our collaboration design plan. So the initial plan is to design and smaller scale optimization of the process. So as I have already told that the hands-on training of Incepta people at UCL and then facilitate the transfer of technology to Incepta for small scale reproducibility and provide support to the team during any bottleneck situation that may arise. So currently Incepta and we are benchmarking the process at Incepta, and in future we will design and execution the scale up for the GMP manufacturing capabilities. So, so, uh, so what? You can say that what is? I cannot give the details of the full project for some reasons. So, so I'm sharing the whole experience and what we have learned from this project. So, so from the preparing the funding proposal, the from the very first day. The project proposal was co-developed jointly by UCL and Incepta, especially Professor Eli and Dr. Saloni. So, so it is not written by one side and shared for comment. So it was like a joint journey for us. So all the budgeting and the resource allocation were discussed openly and in detail before submission, and a dedicated research fellow model gave the project a clear and accountable point of contact. So what we have learned, like uh, from this project, so a very successful international collaboration. So like till to date from the getting the project. So every certain interval, we are sharing our progress and what might go wrong, what we should do, what are the next deliverable points. So that was a great experience to us for this collaboration. And throughout the process development, we checked all the regulatory consideration like uh, no human or animal materials or no clinical trials involved materials, raw materials are used, and all the ethics review. After all the ethics review, we um, set the points. So what might go wrong? What should we do? And throughout all the project design and the team selection and team delivery, we followed all the EDI parameter. So our team shaped very inclusive in team. So So a dedicated research fellow and a this map, this planned map was very deliverable and milestones on schedule. So, so as you can say, like for Bangladesh and other LMIC institutions, so for applying these projects, please identify a specific or well-defined technical gap rather than a broad ambition. Uh, co-develop, if you can co-develop the proposal with your academic partner or other company from day one, including all the budget, and select a dedicated fellow or coordinator for day-to-day project management. So embedded EDI, regulatory and governance planning into the proposal. Not for the afterthought. So, so bottom line for us, like VaxHub Global Funding works best as a catalyst for a narrowly scoped, jointly owned technical gap, not a general R&D grant. So for us, this project is like closing the pDNA gap, completes Bangladesh mRNA vaccine manufacturing chain, and offers a replicable model for LMIC academic partnership. So, so I have to thank many persons, including Professor Martina, Professor Eli, Dr. Salome, and during our visit to UCL, we also visited Oxford, Professor Sarah Gilbert's lab, Dr. Sandy's lab, and Dr. Kath's lab. So this experience, I should say, like it will strengthen our whole process of development and to commercial up to commercial product development. So all from from on behalf of Incepta and Bangladesh, I'd like to thank all these partners. So here you can see I have attached a picture of our Oxford visit day. So thank you from this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ashik. This was great. Thank you for sharing your experience. And also, yeah, there were a few things that obviously I would not have known from a company perspective, and it's great. Like for example, the regulatory, what will make it easier, right, from your side to propose specific projects, which I think is very interesting and probably very good advice for others. If not, I will go ahead with our last presentation, which is from David Jarvis, CTO for Lizello Labs in Africa. Hi, David. Nice to see you. And if you'd like to try and share your slides, I'll just confirm. Perfect. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we appreciate the opportunity to present as a recent recipient of the VaxHub Global Funding. I think it's quite a contrast between Incepta and our company. I think we're probably 1/100th of the size of Incepta in terms of employees, and we're based in Africa. And we operate in one of the smallest, poorest countries on the continent, Lesotho, but we also operate in South Africa. So we're a private R&D company. And for this project, I think the interest from VaxHub was probably mostly due to the locally owned innovation around a vector vaccine, which is relatively unique in the LMIC space. And so this project was focused on testing a novel vaccine vector, which we were testing with a particular challenge for poultry, infectious bronchitis virus, and in a model where we were looking at not just the vaccine, but some interesting ways to boost the vaccine in a low resource setting. So just a little bit of background around us. We're a private company. We're one of the key innovators in some of the technology. Our focus has been trying to identify local African-owned innovation that needs a route to market. And this is exactly an example of that. We'll go into in further slides why we find tech transfer challenging and why we prefer to focus on innovation that is locally owned. VaxHub you obviously know about, VaxHub Global. And perhaps just at this point, I want to point out that a very important part of I think, our successful venture into application and award for VaxHub was the networking that led us to meet VaxHub in the UK at a networking event, meet some of the principals, understand their thinking, and that is something that wouldn't have been possible for us if we didn't have partners in the UK that were facilitating our journey along the way. Many of those partners have joined this session. So just a bit of brief background. We're relatively new. We've only been going for the last 15 years or so. A lot of focus on veterinary, but we do look at zoonotic applications always. We have a very One Health focus in our organization. And in almost every case, there's the zoonotic angle, even if it's not zoonosis in the true vaccinology definition of the word. But veterinary disease obviously has impact on human health at multiple levels. We are a business, we run for profit. So we are in the business of bringing innovations to market, and the entrepreneurial team does make us reasonably nimble and agile. And so we're able to expand our operations to service a need like we did during the pandemic in a number of regional countries around the crisis for SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19. And off the back of our work in immunotherapeutics in particular, we have secured funding from government and private in Africa, but most recently also from VaxHub and other networks in the UK. Collaborations are absolutely essential to all of our projects, and we rely heavily on the innovation coming out of academia. It's a very multidisciplinary research team, from zoologists to virologists to nanotech specialists to IT specialists. And I think that diversity gives us unique, nuanced views of problems that we faced with. And I think that's a key strength for our organization. We do have a few products in the market, primarily around immunotherapies that have come out of previous projects for humans and animals. We do run some molecular diagnostics capacity for which responded to the pandemic in multiple countries, and we have hematology and blood chemistry commercial services. We also have some capacity for sequencing in partnership with World Bank funded facility in Lesotho for genomics. And we've also developed an app, which we like to believe was the world's first One Health diagnostics app, which has given us some ability to join together some of our diverse diagnostics projects. We do have a GMP certified non-sterile drug manufacturing facility. And so a lot of our focus in our formulations for our therapeutics deals with the fact that we don't have sterile manufacturing capacity. And so we're trying to find per oral formulations and other routes of administration that don't require sterile manufacturing to try and circumvent the need for the costly sterile manufacturing requirements. We do a lot of animal research in Lesotho in particular, mostly in birds, but we can expand into other production animal systems, particularly in partnership with the National University of Lesotho. That's now where I'm an adjunct researcher in the agriculture department. So that just gives some context, because I think it's important to understand why we've pitched a vaccine for veterinary application to VaxHub that typically doesn't fund veterinary work or is more focused on human work, and why the impact. So I spoke a bit about zoonosis, and this might be a bit of a stretch for those purists in the the group, the virologists, sorry, the virologists who into nomenclature. Essentially, IBV was the first coronavirus ever published, right? So it's a gamma coronavirus as opposed to SARS-CoV-2, which is a beta coronavirus. And it's important because it impacts on the health of broilers, so chickens, broilers and layers. And there are 66 billion of them, so way more than humans, right? So we obviously eat a lot of chicken. But as a coronavirus, you can imagine there's a lot of research coming out of the pandemic, which is relevant to other coronaviruses. We did work on MERS originally. We were working on a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, and out of that work, there were applications that we've now applied to an avian coronavirus, which also has massive health impacts for birds, but obviously knock-on effects for all of us humans on the planet that eat the birds and rely on the eggs, etc. But beyond that, and it's what came out of our work during the pandemic, there is a potential zoonotic risk, particularly in the case of agricultural workers working with poultry, where IBV is endemic in most poultry herds, where there's a potential for recombination between gamma and beta coronaviruses, which could be quite concerning. And some of our work identified that there are quite a few epigenetic similarities, sorry, not epigenetic, epitope similarities in the humoral response for IBV and SARS-CoV-2. That work, we can talk about it in a different platform. So live attenuated vaccines currently are being used to manage IBV. And typically multiple strains are used mixed together with live strains or live wild type strains. So it's a big risk that we're all aware of using live attenuated vaccines. Low cost, but risky. And at the end of the day, not very well managed in many scenarios. Cold chain dependency is always a challenge. We try to address some of those issues. And then vaccinating a chicken is stressful for the chicken, depending on the route of administration. Fortunately, with IBV, it's typically in the water, which is a great per-oral route of vaccination. But you don't necessarily want to handle the animals too often. And so finding an easy way to deliver the vaccine is useful. So just looking at what we proposed for this project and what we're busy executing, we were awarded this project funding in October last year, and it's due for completion in October this year, to the tight timeline. But it's a dual-phased approach. So the mechanism one is trying to stimulate an adaptive response in the birds. We have a vector, which I'll explain a little bit in detail just now. It's derived from a beak and feather disease virus, which affects parrots. And that vector is used to express a IBV subunit. In this case, it's a portion of the S1 protein. Sounds similar, doesn't it, to SARS-CoV-2? And that then elicits your typical, anti-humoral and your cellular response to the exogenous IBV subunit, which is expressed by the vector. But in combination with that, and it's really, I think what was unique about our offering is we're trying to engage the innate response by providing a passive immunity complement to the vaccine. So the idea here is to utilize antibodies that have been raised against the very same IBV subunits, but then supplementing those antibodies in the feed as a passive immunity complement, possibly boost to the vectored vaccine initial response to be able to extend in a relatively non-invasive way the immune response to the pathogen in question. So for those who don't know, beak and feather disease virus is rather unique in that it's a circovirus. It's a very small single-stranded DNA virus which doesn't infect. So there are no circoviruses published to infect humans or mammals for that. Oh, sorry, there are some for pigs, but none for humans. It's very, very small. It's single-stranded DNA, so it doesn't easily elicit a strong immune response. And in parrots, it's quite devastating. And there's no vaccine available. So work that went into developing a vaccine also was expanded into identifying it as a vector for other diseases. And it's been patented with the University of Cape Town here in South Africa as a vector that can be used to deliver antigen in a veterinary or in a human context. So the challenges we're trying to deal with is that in the live attenuated vaccines, you obviously have this challenge of reversion to virulence for your attenuated strains. You have multiple strains of IBV, so you have to have multiple different kinds of vaccines targeting a situation where the birds live with a managed viremia. So you never eliminate the virus, you just manage the wild type viremia so that it never generates too significant an impact on the birds, which is probably suboptimal. Obviously, there's cold chain reliance in many cases. There is a zoonotic recombination risk, poorly understood, but certainly of concern to our group between the beta and gamma coronaviruses. And typically you need to have a relatively manual application of a very complicated vaccination campaign with your live attenuated vaccines. In our model, we're using a vector. It's not pathogenic. There's no reversion to virulence. That adds to the safety. We are formulating with spray drying the egg powder, which contains the boost component of the vaccine regimen. And obviously, because there's no live attenuated virus, there's no reversion risk. And because we look at a day one vaccination followed by in-feed boosting, it's very low, how should I say, very uncomplicated or low impact on the birds to keep the dosage being delivered in the feed. So the project methodology essentially has four main aims. Initially, some in vitro expression, largely repeating work that's been done previously with our vector, but in this case, looking at our novel construct, which is the amino-terminal spike of IBV. So we all know about the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. This is half of the spike protein which you inserted into our vector, which is being expressed in DF1, which is a chicken cell line, as well as some mammalian cell lines, to just evaluate largely for safety and initial efficacy in vitro. The formulation is mostly focused on the boost component with a hyperimmune egg, and there we have spray drying capacity that is allowing the powder to be formulated into dry animal feed so that it can be stored at room temperature, delivered at room temperature, and eaten by the animals as a passive immunity stroke boost to the vaccine strategy. So the in vivo clinical work that is ongoing is work in quails and chicken, demonstrating expression or rather immunogenicity of the vector expressed protein in quails and chicken using ELISA, and then also monitoring in AIM4, evaluating the effect of the booster in feed hyperimmune egg powder as a support or as a booster to the initial vectored vaccine delivery of the antigen. So very high level, the project aims to look at food security. Poultry is a critical part of food security for humans. So it protects not only commercial, but also subsistence farming, but also looking at maintaining the viremia better in birds so that you have better productivity, means less disease burden, better feed conversion, the kind of things that farmers are interested in to maximize profits and make more affordable protein. The sovereign manufacturing component is something very close to us. It's about leveraging IP that's owned on the continent, eliminating the need for tech transfer where we can, and trying to find solutions that fit within our current constraints. One of them being lack of sterile manufacturing capacity, so we can make feed additives, for example, in our facilities under GMP where we can't make injectables at this stage. And then just in terms of a global health security strategy, having the ability to rapidly deploy a platform that can be delivered for a variety of veterinary and or human diseases with a combination of a single dose potentially boosted by a per oral supplement, for example, in milk for infants, for human infants, or in breakfast cereals for adults, is part of the vision for where the platform could impact global health security. So just coming back to VaxHub itself and our engagement with the application and its delivery, and then some suggestions of where we recommend people look if they want to apply to VaxHub. So we're a relatively small organization. A 12-month timeline is tight. Don't be fooled by a year being enough time to put together a project. It's taxing and important that you don't overestimate, I guess, your capacity to deliver too much within that time. The structure of the application form is really useful, and it directs you very well, I think, into your thought process around what is actually achievable, how am I going to meet the objectives of the VaxHub team. So I think following that application form carefully, like we did, I think is part of the success criteria. We think we had a lot of extra value to add, which is evident, I think, from most LMIC bidders or applicants, is that if you can bring your local ecosystem to the party is what contributes to the cost effectiveness of delivery compared to, for example, global North alternatives. I think that's seen as valuable. And in our model, we focused, as has been mentioned before, on an existing technology that had reached a certain stage and had stalled and was needing some additional work. And that's essentially the gap that VaxHub has filled. They've allowed us to progress the work. And what we did is built in a couple of de-risked milestones so that we can progress the project relatively quickly. Although in retrospect, we probably should have been a little bit less ambitious, but we'll get there. And then I think leveraging your existing ecosystem, like I've mentioned before, we've got clinical capacity in South Africa and Lesotho, where that allowed us to innovate, particularly around the animal clinical work, quite rapidly. So I've sort of mentioned this before in the blue. Just pitch the final mile. Don't do ground up research, and utilize your own infrastructure as much as possible. I might just add, we were the only applicant in this application. So we were awarded as a sole applicant, which is unusual for us because we normally rely heavily on our academic partners. And in fact, in our other grants in the UK, we've relied heavily on European and UK-based academia. So I don't know if we were an outlier there, but we were rather surprised that as a company sole applicant, we managed to secure the funding. That doesn't say we don't have a lot of dependency on academia in our ecosystem for this project, just not part of the official collaboration for executing this project. Just going to check the time. So I mentioned this before around the global North, global South. Our company is quite passionate about trying to break this reliance on global North tech. And sometimes it requires, because it basically means that we keep the skills in the North and we keep the money in the North. And then we end up with, the product in the South, but the dependency remains. which is fine. You could regard it as a bridging process until you can get your own autonomy. But we'd like to believe that there are innovations that are currently happening on continent and in the African continent and within other LMICs, where even within the constraints of certain skill gaps and lack of infrastructure, there is room to innovate and bring that innovation to market. And we prefer to work on those, even if they have other shortcomings, lower efficacy, possibly even higher cost of production, because they deal with this big equation here, the dependence. We don't like dependence as much as we are very thankful for the UK funded money, which comes from the global north. It is clearly structured in such a way that they're trying to build capacity for us in the global south to be more independent, and we certainly want to live up to that expectation. Yeah, so I think I've said enough about that slide. Thanks very much for the invitation and opportunity, to VaxHub, to the team. Questions, please, that I'll try and answer.
Thank you, first of all, to thank Hashik and David for their presentations. Very interesting. You raised some points that I was not aware of in terms of the benefits and in terms of also about your experience. So that's actually quite useful for me to hear. Thanks everybody for coming today. Don't have many, announcement for today. The only one is really at our annual meeting, which is going to be early November. Information about that is coming out soon to all our partners, so you can book that in your diaries. And it's going to be, I promise, we'll try to make it as different from the previous one, as informative as possible. Present our research, present some of the results from the projects we have funded, and so we hope again it's going to be a 2 days event in London, but obviously hybrid. Always accessible. So thank you all for coming and having a great day. Have a great day. Thank you.